Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast. Hosted by Seth Andrews.
I saw this cartoon, and it shows various elements combining crushing darkness, time drags, seemingly no escape, inhospitably cold. And one person says black hole, and the other said, no, it is just January. And right now, of course, we've been seeing this historic, what meteorologists have been calling a once-in-a-generation winter storm blasting across the southeast. It's just been crazy. I'm ready for spring. I don't know about you, but Natalie and I have been waking up recently, and we just brace ourselves. Now we're waiting to be force-fed the next dose of existential dread. What will the algorithm bring us today? What's the headline going to say today? What fresh hell awaits us today? And we have been then seeking therapy, distraction, something else to think about. And we've gotten hooked on this docu-series that is streaming on Prime. It's called The Yorkshire Vet. And I'll just describe it here while I'm waiting for the switchboard to populate with calls. Today is your calls on any subject that you want to talk about. The Yorkshire Vet, these charming people, doctors and nurses and support staff at Skeldale Veterinary Center in Thirsk, North Yorkshire. This beautiful stretch of land and all kinds of creatures, great and small, treated by the Yorkshire Vets. Someone brings in a mommy dog that is having trouble delivering puppies, and so the vets intervene, and before you know it, there's a table full of puppies. Oh my God, the puppies, they're just so freaking cute. Somebody else has a chicken, and the chicken's not properly digesting its food, so they put this little anesthetic mask on the chicken head, and it goes to sleep, and then they make a little incision, and they pull out like 2 pounds of food that just got stuck. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. And then the chicken wakes up like nothing happened and goes on with the rest of its day. You have a kid brings in his pet rat, but the rat is 3 times the size it's supposed to be because the kid's been feeding it essentially candy. So they put the rat on a diet. And then they monitor the weight of the rat throughout the show. They bring in baby goats and have to remove the horns, which you think would be traumatic, but it's actually not. In fact, it's fascinating. And the beauty of UK medical shows is that they don't shy away. Like in the United States, if we get anywhere near an incision or blood or private areas, even on cows and stuff, they just blur everything. But not in the UK. They just show you everything, for better and worse. And as there is death and life in the real world, there is death and life in the show, which adds a little bit of urgency to the cases that come in, because you honestly don't know that everything is going to have a happy ending. Occasionally it doesn't. Usually, though, it does. And we are obsessed. We watched 3 seasons in a week. 3 seasons of the Yorkshire Vet. We're so tired we can't even keep our eyes open lying in bed with the TV on. You. Let's just watch one more, honey. And cute, sweet animals being rescued and rehabilitated, that's good medicine. So if you're looking for a distraction of your own, and you like critters and the Yorkshire countryside, and don't mind seeing the occasional pile of undigested chicken food, I just want to throw that recommendation out there, okay? That's a freebie from me and Natalie to you. And now that I've bought us some time, let me take us to the switchboard. I've got Mick on a web call from Australia. Mick, thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to have a quick talk about what I consider God's hypocrisy. God of the Bible, I would reckon, is probably one of the greatest sinners, certainly in the Old Testament, than anyone else ever. And I mean by that would be the 7 deadly sins. So you've got the 7 deadly sins, and the God of the Bible constantly commits them non-stop. Now, you and I and anyone else would probably get their asses thrown in hell for it, but he keeps doing it all the time. For example, he's constantly brought to wrath. He is envious, jealous of everyone else, of other gods. He has pride. Well, there's jealousy straight up as well. And quite a few others. What do you think?
I think you're totally onto something. He's the do as I say, not as I do God, isn't he?
Absolutely, absolutely. I tried looking at a few others. You could put him down as sloth because for most of the early part of the Old Testament, he was constantly talking with people and walking on earth and all that other rubbish. And then, of course, ever since then, he's never shown his face to anyone ever again. So that's laziness, isn't it?
It is indeed. I got to look up all of them now and just make sure I'm remembering. The 7 deadly sins: pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. Trying to think about gluttony, if he's a spiritual being.
Yeah, I had a bit of trouble with that one. But,
well, maybe it's more gluttony in terms of like coveting. You know, he's gluttonous for power, obedience, and worship. Maybe that's gluttony. I buy that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's the religious climate in your part of Australia?
So we're obviously not as fanatical or religious as you guys are over there in America. For the most part, over here isn't as big a deal. People have their religion. Some people have their religion and they go to church every Sunday. But the numbers are waning over here, and I think I looked it up a few weeks ago, and it's probably down to about 40 or 50% now, which is a good thing, I suppose. But most people, unlike what I hear going on in America, where people are at work and they ask you about God and all that sort of rubbish, that doesn't happen here. People really don't give a shit about religion.
Oh, I envy you.
So it's a good climate to be in, mate.
I envy you. Yeah, it would be nice.
Can I ask you one thing? Trump has already gone after Roe versus Wade. And with the Christian nationalists getting in again, is it probable they're going to go after the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment? Because that's been a thorn in their side for years. Oh,
it's already happening. We've got blacklists. We've got threats against journalists. We've got the threats to remove credentials from any sort of non-sycophantic publications. We've got the oligarchs who are running the Washington Post, etc., and they are censoring their own people. You've got journalists who are quitting in protests and trying to start management-free journalism elsewhere out in the wild on the internet. You've got the Christian nationalists who have long been going after the Establishment Clause. We've got, in my home state, we've got a politician who has submitted yet again for the umpteenth time laws to put the 10 Commandments in public schools. And I'm I'm right here on the razor's edge, because part of me wants to be informed about the world. I don't want to be uninformed, is a better way to say it. But at the same time, I want to protect myself from the unbelievable, jaw-dropping, brain-melting, heart-killing bullshit that is going to be going on for the next several years. And I don't know how to handle it. And I'm struggling with it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you guys aren't alone. You know, pretty much most of us here in the rest of the world are on your side. And sometimes when I'm debating Americans, they say, well, you know, our politics is none of your business. Well, the matter of fact is that anything that happens in America affects all of us here in the rest of the world. So really, we've got a say as well. Even though we haven't got a vote, we do have a say.
We are all the human condition. Everything that happens here does ripple out. There are consequences, and you absolutely have every right to have an opinion and to even be an activist on that opinion. And I welcome your partner. I feel like 10,000 miles away, I have a brother who understands me, who feels my pain and the pain of so many millions of Americans. Mick, I hope to get back down under in the next few years. Maybe it's worth the 15-hour plane ride from LAX to Sydney just to be down to that beautiful place. So if I get down there, we'll shake hands and talk, okay?
Great talking to you, mate. Thank you. Bye.
All right, see you later. Take care. I've got Mike at 520. Mike, are you there?
I am here. How are you, Seth?
I'm well. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind today?
So I just want to start out. I want to give you a little thank you. You were instrumental in my own journey out of Christianity. You were the first atheist that I came across when I was first starting to really doubt. And your work has done a tremendous help for me mentally and emotionally and, dare I say, spiritually.
Oh, wow, that's huge. Thank you. How'd you find me? Would you type the word atheist into Google?
No, actually. So it started out because part of what I wanted to talk to you about, because you had mentioned before that during your formative years, you were partially raised in Pentecostal churches.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I came from. That's where I came out of. And I had already left Pentecostalism, and I was just kind of rooting around looking for something that fit me better, in a sense. And it was quite literally one of those things. The YouTube algorithm back in 2010 decided that, I was looking at just what different faiths were believing, and one of your videos popped up, your video about Noah's Ark. And I watched it, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And so I kind of followed down that rabbit hole, and you led me to reading books. Christopher Hitchens, God is Not Great, kind of got me into Sam Harris when he was more of a public figure. And a few short years later, I just kind of came to the realization of holy shit, I don't think that there is a God. So yeah, it was quite literally, I stumbled on you.
My mother was Pentecostal, and I remember the times we went to Pentecostal churches. They did the, jumping around and speaking in other tongues, thanks to the Holy Spirit. How intense was your Pentecostal faith? Was it that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah, very much so. Very much the speaking in tongues, the running around the aisles, the rolling in the aisles. The people make the jokes of barking like dogs, but that did happen a time or two. And it was all just performative art to show everyone that, hey, I'm a true blue Pentecostal. See how in the faith I am.
Mike, if I can jump in quickly, did you speak in tongues and roll around and do all that? And if you did, where did that come from? Did you feel pressure? Like, well, everybody else is doing it, so I have to show that I'm filled with the Holy Spirit as well?
Yes, I did. The first time that I did, this is going to sound terrible, but I was 6 years old. And it was a special service. Some missionary had come raising money for a mission he was doing somewhere on the outside of the world. And they had that altar call, and the pastor's assistants asked who hasn't had the Holy Ghost. And so, me being all of 6 years old, raised my hand. And so they brought me up to the church, and in the church at the time of about 200 people, I was the center focal point. And I had about 50 people crowding in around me, putting hands on me, all of them yelling in gibberish. And so I started crying, because at 6 years old, that is a huge thing to put onto a child. And my lips started quivering, and to them, that was speaking in tongues. It's like, oh, he has the Holy Ghost. And so, that was, this big, huge celebration, but I'm just bawling and crying and, curled up in a ball. And so from there, it became the norm. Now that I have the Holy Ghost, I have to learn how to actually speak in tongues. And it's not something that they actually like to admit that they teach you how to do, but they do. And so you learn, how to, you hear, the pastor doing it and people around you, and you just start to do the same kind of things. And so I started doing that because that's how you show that you're a Christian and, you want to fit in. So, yeah, I can say that, yes, I did speak in tongues, and I can absolutely guarantee that it is all forced, and it's a learned habit and behavior.
Had to have been a tough journey to bust out of that. Are you doing okay? Are people judging you? You got people trying to anoint you with oil and lay hands on you and do all that Pentecostal stuff to bring you back home?
Not anymore. It has pretty much destroyed my relationship with my family. We speak on holidays. That's about it. But I'd rather have my peace than family that doesn't accept who I am. So I've got my wife and my dogs, and, we're just out here living our best life.
You got family here, Mike. What are your dogs' names?
I have a mutt. His name is Bilbo. Then I have a purebred beagle, and her name is Pippin.
Bilbo and Pippin. Oh, give them scritches for me. And thanks for the kind words and sharing your story, Mike. You're much appreciated.
Thank you, sir. Keep up the good work.
Take care of yourself. Little Bilbo and Pippin. I love dog names. Some of my favorite dog names are human names. I mean, the dog names are fun. But all animals, whenever they have a distinctly human name, like, oh, look, here's my cockatoo. His name is Larry. I just think that's awesome. This is Charles. There's something so charming about that. Tony at 970. Thanks for waiting. Are you there?
Yes. How are you?
I'm well, Tony.
Hey, I did see that video that you made. That one, what was it called? The Story of Us?
Oh, yeah, the one I was whining about a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's like, I made a video and nobody watched it. And somebody was like, would you like some cheese with that wine, Seth? And they're probably right. I was being a big baby. But thanks for watching it, Tony.
Yeah, I posted it on Facebook, and I sent it to a lot of my family members. I used to be a Christian, but not anymore, probably not for the last 18 years. But, yeah, none of my family ever answered or acknowledged that I even sent it to them, and they think I'm going to hell.
Take a number. You and I are going to the same hell, so maybe I'll save you space if I get there first.
Right, yeah, there always is. I need to get back into church and get my life right with God so I don't burn in hell. So anyway, yeah. So you're not alone out there.
Well, I appreciate it. What else is going on, Tony?
I'm just working right now. I enjoy listening to your shows and your podcast and learning a lot. Just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Tony. And have a good day at work and safe drive home, okay?
All right. Thank you, Seth.
See you later. 512, is it Gomez?
Yes. It's Joaquin Gomez. Hi. How you doing?
Welcome. Let's talk. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm just not sure if your community is aware of the recent ridiculous flat Earth debunkings that have been going on. Mostly, I see a lot of religious people believing in this pseudoscience stuff, And, there was Professor Dave. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. It's kind of been viral.
You're talking about Dave Farina? Help me understand. The flat Earth has a new conspiracy theory, or there's a new method of debunking flat Earth?
Well, there was a recent, they called it the final experiment, where they went to Antarctica to see, because they didn't believe that the sun was a 24-hour sun. And on their flat Earth model, they're like, if there is, there was just all these conspiracies around. No one's allowed to go to Antarctica. So some rich guy paid for basically the top flat earthers to go down there and see it for themselves. And some of them actually turned away from it when they realized that their theory was wrong, that the sun is 24 hours in Antarctica. They used to think there was like an ice wall. But honestly, most of them are still believing this pseudoscience, even though their own thing, it's called the final experiment. It was kind of recently, I wouldn't say like 2 weeks ago, they went down there. And they're still clinging to their beliefs, I guess.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for talking about it, and thanks for calling.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Keep up the good work, man.
See you later. Okay, I pulled up the news story. This was published on the 18th of December, 2024, after a pastor took a group of flat earthers to Antarctica to prove definitively what shape our planet is. Some of the truthers were startled to find that the globe is indeed round. In an expedition dubbed the Final Experiment, Pastor Will Duffy took a group of flat earthers to Antarctica for the first time ever. His mission: to prove that there are no barriers, literal or figurative, to prevent him from visiting, but also that the sun shines there 24 hours a day in the summer, something that simply couldn't happen if the planet was actually flat. Pastor Duffy said, "I created the final experiment to end this debate After we go to Antarctica, no one has to waste any more time debating the shape of the Earth. In a video from that voyage, flat Earth influencer Jaron Campanella admitted that when it comes to the midnight sun, he may have been mistaken. And Jaron actually made this confession or admission on video. Here's the clip.
So obviously you all know Jaron Campanella of Jaronism, one of the most popular Flat Earth YouTube channels.
Not for long. All right, guys. Sometimes you are wrong in life. And I thought that there was no 24-hour sun. In fact, I was pretty sure of it. But I respect Will Duffy for being a stand-up guy, at least in the way that he kept saying it was true. I kept saying it wasn't. He said, "You want to go? I'll take you." And brought me here. And it's a fact. The sun does circle you in the south. So what does that mean? You guys are going to have to figure that out yourself. Don't listen to my beliefs or my opinion. It shouldn't matter to you. But at least you should be able to accept that the sun does exactly what these guys said as far as circles the southern continent. So that's about it. I realize that I'll be called a shill for just saying that. And you know what? If you're a shill for being honest, so be it. I honestly believe there was no 24-hour sun. I honestly now believe there is.
Okay, couple of things on this real fast. First of all, Pastor Will Duffy, who is the pastor of a Christian church in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, Agape Kingdom Fellowship. He's a volunteer pastor. He took that role after the original pastor passed away, so we sort of jumped behind the podium, and he's been there, and he believes the Earth is a sphere, and he organized the trip, and he managed to convince, 3 or 4 flat earthers who took the journey that, yes, the Earth is a sphere, it is not flat. Yet I have to wonder if Pastor Duffy has read his own Bible about the shape and nature of the planet. The first chapter of the book of Genesis, God said, "Let there be a dome in the middle of the water. Let it divide the water from the water." God made the dome and divided the water under the dome from the water above the dome. That is how it was. And God called the dome sky. So apparently there was the water here that we see in our lakes and oceans, and then there's a firmament. Think of a snow globe, right? We've got the flat earth here, and then we've got the big dome. And then there's space water that has been separated out there. And a lot of Christian apologists like to use this particular verse and scenario to explain Noah's Ark. God allowed or caused a rift in the firmament, so the space water spilled down and covered the planet in liquid, right? And this is part of the foundational book of Pastor Will Duffy's religion. Has he not read the book of Revelation? Revelation 7:1, "And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth." How can the earth have corners if it's a sphere? Secondly, and I think this is kind of typical, and we've discovered this about identity beliefs and conspiracy theorists, Duffy sent out a press release in advance of the trip, and he said, "Once we go here and we demonstrate the earth isn't flat, the debate will be over and no one will need to waste any more time." Yet, oh, how he had underestimated flat earthers who would protest from, ironically, all around the world on websites and in forums and across Reddits and social media platforms. Flat earthers have been explaining why it's all fake. They're talking about camera angles and shadows that make no sense and footprints. There was even a pastor in Alabama who said Satan was involved in the planning of this expedition and the posting of these lies about an earth which is obviously flat. I talked about flat earthers in my speech that I posted just a few months ago called The Brick Wall Brain, Why Facts Aren't Changing Minds. And I encourage you to look that up because we get into why identity beliefs are just so entrenched and so hard to change. But I got to give props to the people who took the trip and looked around and saw the sun and said, I was wrong, I'm going to update my position, that does give me a little bit of hope. Anyway, we have more of your calls. Whatever you want to talk about, we will talk about next. My patrons get the broadcast commercial free. They also get it 2 days early, and your support is so welcome and appreciated. Patreon.com/Seth Andrews. I've got Michael on a web call. Michael, thanks for waiting. Are you there?
I am. How are you, Seth?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
I'm just looking at the trends around us and how fewer and fewer people know how to vet sources. Fewer and fewer people know who they should trust. There's really no such thing as an authoritative source to a lot of people. A lot of people, you did a video recently about how facts don't change minds. So I'm wondering, how do we navigate this as a society? How do we move forward? I mean, I think, shows like yours are important and I support them and I talk about these issues with my friends and family, but it doesn't seem like that's enough. So, can you look into your crystal ball a little bit for me?
This is the dilemma, and I wrestle with it. And it's interesting because 99% of scientists can say whatever, like evolutionary scientists, there's a consensus. But in the minds of some, the more there is a scientific consensus, the more it proves the conspiracy that scientists want to lie to you. And what do you do with that, right, Michael?
Right. And, to some extent, the meta of this seems to be like we're preaching to the choir, if you'll forgive the pun, because the people who are good at skepticism and critical thinking, they don't need to be told those things that they should be open. And I think, it's the people that need to hear it are the ones that aren't paying attention to what we're saying and have no interest in the conversation.
I think one of the utilities of shows like this and the tone that I try to set, for better and worse, is to maybe create a forum where we can better tool ourselves up for conversations in our own life. Where we go out and we interact with the world. I'm trying to be a de-escalator. I'm sick and tired of all the name calling and the pointing and the blaming and the shaming on the micro level, on the day-to-day level when we deal with our friends and neighbors. And I mean, I understand frustration, but I'm trying to get to the point where we can get in and maybe create a crack that lets in the light. But I'm surrounded by people who even to this day are more afraid of the COVID vaccine than they are of the COVID virus. I know somebody who thinks the earth is a disc. I know people that think the earth is a few thousand years old, like the Sumerians. Apparently the Sumerians didn't exist, right, Michael? I mean, and I have that same question.
That old, you can't reason yourself out of a position you didn't reason yourself into. And I think that applies. But, me and my partner, we've both been working and practicing and getting better at spotting logical fallacies and being informed and learning how to have those conversations and navigate them and call out the bad arguments when we see them. And I think you're absolutely right. I think more people having that skill set is going to be an avenue here. But, I always feel like maybe there's something more we should be doing, and I'm not sure what that is.
The imperfect answer is that we are going to have to determine which sources are credible. And I think those questions, to a degree, can be answered. I mean, you can see actual vetted peer-reviewed scientists who are publishing in Nature, et cetera. I'm not saying they've never gotten it wrong, because they have, but I mean, I think we can do our own homework to see that we have credible researchers and teachers and even scientific activists who actually know what they're talking about, and they're continually checked by others who are experts in their field. Right. And there are hubs for those types of information. And if we contrast them with, say, evolutionnews.com or Joe Rogan or some of these other bad shit, we can see that one is going to be more credible than the other. There are websites like Snopes and others. Verifact, I think, is another one, or Verify. I'll have to look it up. I'll have to fact check my website fact checking, but there are more and more of these things which at least tool us up to take that journey and do our best. But our best is always going to be imperfect. And in the era of bad info and the oligarchs and fake news and deep fake videos, etc., I don't know. I'm overwhelmed by it, Michael. I'm just overwhelmed.
Yeah, I am too. And, it's nice to share some sort of kinship in that regard. And I'm here to try to move this forward. I'm here to try to do the right thing and try to improve society for everybody. But it just seems like it's just a tsunami right now. And it feels like I'm a very small person trying to fight the tsunami, if you know what I mean.
And that's a strategy. You know, the disinformers out there, it's like the Merchants of Doubt, that book that was written about the tobacco industry, etc. They don't need to go out and debunk as much as they need to create a fog so that no one knows anything, nobody trusts anything. And, you know, when you get people to question even the most basic of things, the earth is a sphere, we landed on the moon, vaccines work, etc. If you can get people just to decide, well, nothing is verifiable, then you can get away with murder. And that's so frustrating in the era of the oligarchs. The billionaires now have weaponized the media. And the largely ignorant public is lapping it up as Carl Sagan rolls over in his grave. And the best I know how to do is to try to find hubs where the experts are, and we can verify that they are experts being peer-reviewed and checked by other experts, to set them off, to sort of cull them from the disinformers out there, to do our best to ask the hard questions. It's an imperfect solution, but it's all I got, Michael.
Yeah, I've arrived at the same conclusion, and I'm watching, I've been studying AI lately, and that's just the worst possible, pour the gasoline on the fire of people asking this algorithm questions now, and the algorithm doesn't know what's true and what's false. It's just repeating things. So yeah, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately, and I'm just trying to think about how do I prepare myself, the people around me, to basically meet this head on.
This is related, Michael. I saw a TED Talk from a man. I'm doing this from memory, so give me some grace. But he was talking about a new kind of scam. He picked up the phone, and his son was on the other line, and his son he was overseas. In real life, he'd been overseas, but the voice of his son said, I have gotten myself in legal trouble, and I need $10,000 wired here if I'm going to get out of jail. Dad, can you help me? Dad, please, I want to come home. And his father was, of course, absolutely traumatized, and he wanted to rescue his son. But over the course of this short conversation, realized that there were a few things that didn't ring true. And it became apparent that the voice was computer generated to sound just like his son, but it was, in fact, a scammer. And for that reason, Natalie and I have come up with, I'll call them safe words. Honey, if I ever call with an outlandish story and I need money, or I'm trying to get resources, or I want your passwords, or I need any of this other stuff, here are some questions that only you and I would know the answers to. We have to verify each other's identity, because we live in an age where somebody could call and sound like me or you, and the other might not even know the difference. So maybe we need an entire culture of passwords, verifiable words, proof of life words, safe words when it comes to those types of things. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good thought. And it's certainly something I'll be talking with my partner about. So Thanks for that. Anyway, I love the show and happy to support any way I can, and keep fighting the good fight, Seth.
Thank you, Michael. Take care.
Take care.
I just pulled up this related story. It's a different instance, but it sounds awfully familiar. This is becoming a more common scam. October 2024, a California senior citizen was swindled out of $25,000 by scammers using an AI voice mimicking his son to make him believe his loved one was involved in a horrible accident and needed money to be bailed out of jail. The man, identified only as Anthony, said he received a call from who he believed to be his son, saying he'd struck a pregnant woman while driving and she was rushed to the ICU. It was his voice. It was absolutely his voice, he told ABC 7 News. There was no doubt about it. Anthony said that after a short conversation, the scammer, using his son's AI-generated voice, hung up, but he received a second phone call minutes later from a man claiming to be his son's lawyer, Michael Roberts. He said, "You need to get $9,200 as fast as you can if you want to get your son out of jail. Otherwise, he's in for 45 days. Suspicious about the lawyer's call, Anthony said he tried calling his son to verify that he needed the bail money, but his call was sent to voicemail. The worried father then went to his bank and told the teller he needed a large sum of money for solar panel installation so as to not raise any unwanted questions about the situation. After returning home, Anthony had his daughter call the lawyer again, who told them an Uber would be by shortly to pick up the bail money. Surveillance cameras outside his home show his daughter verifying the Uber license plate number and handing the money to the driver. However, the scammers weren't finished. Moments after the driver left, Anthony received another phone call, this time from a man named Mark Cohen, who identified himself as another lawyer on his son's case and told him the pregnant woman had died and his son's bail had been raised to $25,000. Fearing his son desperately needed the money to be bailed out of jail, the concerned father returned to the bank and repeated the entire process. After pulling out more money from the bank and handing the second payment to another Uber driver, the call stopped, and Anthony was left wondering if his son had been released from jail. As they waited, he said his daughter began researching the number and what was said to him online, where she made a disheartening discovery. "Dad, I hope I'm wrong," she said. "I think you've just been scammed out of $25,000. Anthony said he was so worried about the fate of his son that it never even crossed his mind until after the fact that he was being swindled out of a large chunk of his savings. Los Angeles Police Department Detective Chelsea Sager told ABC7 that scammers have become more clever and sophisticated over the years. They're using social media and technology to craft these very believable and convincing stories. And people really do believe they're talking to a grandchild or a government official. While phone scams are not new, technological advances, specifically in artificial intelligence and number blockers, have opened a new playing field for fraudsters who prey on unsuspecting victims to steal their hard-earned money. They call, and when you answer and it's a scammer, there's silence. They want you to say hello or is anybody there. All they need is 3 seconds of your voice to input it into AI and clone it. The detective also said scammers will go through video posts on social media as a way for them to capture voices and clone them to use to defraud others. Sager told the outlet the department was investigating what had happened to Anthony and looking into the drivers who had picked up the money. However, she revealed that Uber or Lyft drivers are usually uninvolved in the con and are just hired to complete the task, completely unaware that they are even part of the scam. Sanger said never to send money to someone you don't know. Anyway, that's the gist of the story and some of the details about this fresh new scam. So keep your skeptical eyes and ears and mind open and on alert out there. A lot of folks are trying to take what you have by sounding like someone that you already have a relationship with. Pretty scary stuff. Bernard at 470, welcome. Thanks for calling.
How are you? Can you hear me?
I can. What do you want to talk about, my friend?
Originally, the danger, of the encroaching theocracy that they're trying to impose on us here. There was something that Dr. King said, that I'm thinking about it, we want to ban porn. Even if you don't watch porn, like many of us don't, it's an encroachment on free speech. And I worry about people like us, people like you, Seth and Aaron, and so many others who are trying to speak this truth, speak reason, because it's not going to stop. As Dr. King said, a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. They won't stop. And I think that's the real fear, because this ideal, its time has come, and there's nothing more powerful than an ideal whose time has come. And this is why they're so terrified, and that makes them really dangerous. Because I am a former Jehovah's Witness, and I'm telling you, it's a cult. You come out of it and you look back, you don't realize you're in a cult until you're out of the cult. And you look back, oh my God, I was in a cult. It just doesn't make any sense. You begin to put the pieces together, You begin to speak to people who are informed, read books that are informed, look at all sides, and then come to the logical and not only the rational, but the moral conclusion that this doesn't make any sense. Because when I left, I lost that certainty that we who were in the truth, which is what they call it, we have the truth. No one else has it. Only we in this group have it. And the belief that, for instance, that it takes on average, at least when I was in the organization, it took on average knocking on people's doors 6.1 years to convert someone not raised in the religion to the religion, teaching them all the tenets, getting them to agree, getting them baptized, and then getting them out knocking on doors, whereupon at that point, they're one of Jehovah's Witnesses. However, in those 6 years, how many people have been born? So it's just not rational to think, that any all-knowing God would use this method. It's the equivalent of trying to swim up Niagara Falls. It just doesn't make any sense. And the thought that no other group, no other culture, no other people have any truth, any morality, that a mere, maybe at best, 12, 13 million people are completely holding the moral center. It's just irrational. Everyone else is abusing their children, cheating on their wives, cheating on their taxes. They have no morality at all. The only morality are those in our group. It's just absurd. And it's a funny thing that it's like, having chicken pox, which will immune you from maybe a more deadly form of pox. You come out of it and you so quickly realize, wow, I've been through this. I see it in another application. Just as you said, America is God's favorite country. The expression billions and billions. We now know it's trillions and trillions. So all the trillions of planets and star systems, this God is only concerned with the third planet from the sun in a minuscule spot of the Milky Way galaxy. Now, the 190 plus nations, he's only concerned with the American people, as if they can take the flag and plant it on God, their God, and claim it exclusively for this nation. It's absurd. And you come out of it and go, oh my God, I was literally in a brainwashed cult. But I agree like you, because my father was wonderful. My brother is wonderful. My oldest sister is wonderful. I have friends who are still in the group, and they're wonderful. I just think that they're misled, but they are wonderful people. And like you, I've met atheists who are awful, and history has proven that some atheists are awful. But like often you and many others, I view myself not so much as an atheist first, but as a rational humanist. Well, what do you think?
I was on a show with some Christian apologists years ago, and they were taking issue with something I'd written about in my book. It was a book version of my speech, Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot. And I have a chapter in there called Come Lord Jesus, where we, like everybody's looking to the sky for the arrival of Jesus Christ. But if you look at it, even logistically, it makes no sense. And they were talking about my protest that, well, where's he been for 2,000 years? And the rationalization was he wants to give people more time to accept Jesus, which is why he has delayed the rapture, retrieving the believers up into heaven. He wants more time for people to accept him and be rescued. But it's an infinite regress. When does that end? Because you've got millions and millions of people being born all over the place, so you've got fresh people who need to be rescued, and that cycle never ends.
It's never ending. One of the most important thoughts that I learned that helped me, and out of that mindset, was by the great Frederick Douglass. There was a minister who was criticizing him for having run away from his master. He said, "Yeah, you were wrong to run away from your master." And he said, "In what way?" He said, "You should have gotten on your knees and prayed to Providence for your freedom, if that be his will." And I've never gotten over what I read of Douglass's response. And he said, "Sir, on my knees for 20 years, I prayed to your God for my freedom, and it never came. So one night I prayed with my feet, and it was mine." I think, what a wonderful expression. We need to make the world better on our own. We've got to do it. Stop looking for some savior beyond the skies. It's up to us to make the world, looking constantly in the future, because having been one of Jehovah's Witnesses, Armageddon is just around the corner. And just in that organization, they predicted it in 1878, 1914, 1918, 1920, 1938, 1966, most famously 1975. It just goes on and on. It's just a regress that's just like a soccer ball just kicked further down the road. At what point do you say enough? We've got to do it ourselves.
I normally don't do counter apologetics and memes, but I did see one that said, I believe Jesus will return in my lifetime. Signed, billions of dead people. I just thought that was a great meme.
Billions of dead people.
Yeah. Bernard, I appreciate you.
You know.
Thanks for sharing your journey out of the Jehovah's Witnesses and making some good points here. I had a comment in the chat that you have a lovely voice, so people enjoy listening to you speak. Well done.
Well, coming from you, that's high praise indeed. And your book, you do realize that every book that you've written, I've got those books. Not only do I have them all signed by you.
Thank you for that. They're not Hitchens, but I'm proud of them. At this level, I was tempted to include colors and puzzles on a pop-up section, but they are what they are. And I appreciate the kind words, Bernard. Be safe out there, okay?
Okay, and I promise everyone that he did not pay me to say that.
All right, take care. We'll see you later. Bye.
Keep up the good work, sir.
Yeah. Interesting that he brought up Frederick Douglass, because right now I'm in the middle of an audio book. It's narrated by Charles Turner, as Turner narrates the words of abolitionist and Civil War human rights activist Frederick Douglass, a black man who has been born into slavery. And he was taught to read, I think, at least partially by one of his masters, which, of course, the masters then realized was a mistake, because as his mind became liberated, then the rest of him would soon follow. He escaped, became free, and then cemented his name in the history books as one of the fiercest human rights and civil rights and anti-slavery activists in the 19th century. A lot of people think that Frederick Douglass was an atheist. I don't believe that's true, but he was a fierce critic of religion, especially when religion was weaponized to oppress others. And he wrote this quote in the book. He said, "We have men sold to build churches, women sold to support the gospel, and babes sold to purchase Bibles for the poor heathen, all for the glory of God and the good of souls. The slave auctioneer's bell and the church-going bell chime in with each other, and the bitter cries of the heartbroken slave are drowned in the religious shouts of his pious master. Revivals of religion and revivals in the slave trade go hand in hand." If you haven't become familiar with the writings and the speeches of Frederick Douglass, I would encourage you to do so, because I think they really resonate even today. Okay, more of your calls as we continue our time together on the other side of this. This just popped into my brain because it just popped onto my calendar in the last few days. I've been invited by a local skeptics group to go on a ghost hunt. Apparently, there is a theater in a town in Oklahoma, about an hour from me or less, and it is supposedly haunted. I think tongues are planted firmly in cheek. I went and looked at the website, and it's like, well, we've had some people say, So I don't know how straight they're playing it, but this skeptics group is going to go, and I guess they're going to spend the evening or spend the night, and they said, "We know you're local. Would you like to come with us?" And I said, well, I've always wanted to do that, not because I believe in ghosts, but because I love ghost stories. And I've always kind of wanted to grab your sleeping bag or whatever, and take some cameras and audio equipment and just report from the scene. Was there a corpse floating 3 feet above the ground going, woo, Oh, it's the laughter of children inside the walls. That's terrifying. Where did that noise come from? The room was empty. What's up with this temperature drop? The monitor on my camera shows little orbs flying around. Oh, it doesn't look like they're floating. That couldn't have been on the breeze. They're going somewhere on purpose. Maybe it's grandma. I've always wanted to just be in the room for this stuff. And so I'm going to go and I'll take some gear to record some stuff. And if it turns out to be an entertaining evening, then I'll post some stuff about it on my channels and maybe here on the broadcast. I don't know if it's just the skeptics group that's going. I'm kind of hoping there will be some others involved, true believers. The ones who are walking in and they've got the dowsing rods and the temperature meters and the crystals, and they're speaking to the walls. Can you hear me? Do you have a message for me from the afterlife? Or maybe a Ouija board. Hell, I'd participate. Give me the Ouija board. I would like to just be a part of it, but I'm going to see what happens. I'm not expecting really anything to happen, but I will go in with an open mind and then commit myself to submitting anything for proper scientific review if it should happen. So check back in with me in the month of February. Hell, even if I saw a ghost, I don't think I'd be scared at all, because nothing can terrify me more than the living people who occupy my home state of Oklahoma. I'm surrounded by these Bible-waving, red-hatted, dear leader evangelical types who apparently don't realize what they have just done. Either they don't get it, they don't care, or they love it. And Natalie and I have been thinking, I wonder who else would have us. Like if we were to pack up Linus and Gracie and Kat, and we were to move outside of the United States, that seems kind of appealing. Switzerland is supposed to be the greatest country on the planet, statistically, as far as quality of life. Would Switzerland even have us? Could we afford to live there? We've had this conversation. Australia, what a lovely place, and the country seems less insane. The United Kingdom, yeah, they've got their problems, but it doesn't seem equivalent to what's happening here. Canada's probably building a barricade right now just to keep Americans from infecting them. Even for those who think some of this are okay, they can't afford to roll the dice. They can't take the risk. Well, wait a minute. 77 million of you lost your freaking mind. How do we know that the rest of you aren't carriers of some virus or brain worm that has caused all of your reasoning capacities, your moral centers to just fall away? No. You stay out of here. We got our own problems in Canada. But Natalie and I have been talking like, we are open. We're open to getting out of Dodge. I'm not sure I would like this front row seat to the shit show. I've had friends outside of the United States borders reach out and say, if you need a place to stay. No shit. They said, do you need a place? So I'm like, no, I'm not going to be Kato Kalin and sleep on your couch. But, a lot of people are having conversations about where they want to be, where they want their family and friends, and anchored to be geographically when Rome burns itself down, so to speak. Anyway, Kevin at 850. Thanks for calling, Kevin. What's up?
Well, this is kind of weird, but I just want to tell you I love you, bro, man. You're such a good guy.
Thank you.
These things are weird because, you're reaching so many people, and then we have this strange relationship where you don't know us, but we see you. And anyway, that was not what I called about. I was sort of inspired by the discussion about moving out of the country, and I get a little bit worked up about it in the sense that out of care for my fellow human beings, in the sense that it's like in 12-step program, they got this phrase, wherever I go, there I am, And so my personal work for my own mindset is to get right with myself no matter where I'm at. And I know that that's, kind of lofty and philosophical, but at the same time, it's all I can do, really. I can't change the macro about politics and global economics and all that stuff. I don't think there will ever be this perfect solution. So I've found a way to be productive and inspiring and vibrant and potent in my own personal day-to-day life and touch the people around me in the hopes that I can just live in a better place wherever I'm at.
You ever fantasize about just getting out of Dodge?
No, anecdotally, this is, just my personal experience. But last weekend, I was at a major sporting event in Anaheim, California, and I talked to two groups of Canadians that want to be here because they're of the problems in their own country. They would rather be here. And I was in Colombia a while back, and they greeted me with the most loving open arms. So I think that, again, it's a personal mindset in the work that we do on our own for ourselves to look at it from a different way. I just got off a sales meeting call from my job, and our budgets this year are limited, and I can't do the job the way I think that I want to do it. So instead of griping to my boss that I don't have the budget that I need to do my job effectively, I'm looking at it like, okay, this is what I do have, so I'm going to kick ass with what I've got. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess every nation has its own problems, and it is relative. If I was to end up in, say, Yemen or Pakistan, I would be yearning for the United States. So I guess, yeah, it does require some perspective. And that's, I appreciate you giving it, Kevin.
Real quick, don't get me started on that rabbit hole. When I talk to Christians or other believers in whatever that have made up their own God and their own ideas, I say, yeah, there's all these lofty things that we thank God for here in the United States or in some other developed country. And I think, yeah, it's easy to do when you're not born in Syria and your main goal is not to starve to death by the time you're 5.
Appreciate you calling the show very much, my friend.
Thanks, Ed.
I read this article in the New Republic. It was published on the 20th of January. It was titled, "The First Resistance Failed, the Next One Can't," and the subtitle was, "Democrats are wallowing in their failure to stop a second Trump presidency, which looks to be even more damaging than his first one. Snap out of it." I won't read the article here, but you can find it by that title if you want, and I guess it sums things up. Resignation on one side, and the desire to try and continue to fight and salvage and rescue and resuscitate and restore on the other side. And then I think we're a lost cause. We're circling the drain. Maybe it's time just to do a post-mortem and then leave. And then I flip back to the other side of the metronome and say, well, moral people need to stand up for the moral thing. And if you and I don't do it, who will? I'd rather go down fighting back and forth and back and forth. And I don't know. Maybe I'm weak, or maybe you can relate. Maybe Natalie and I could do a 6-month vacation in Canada or Australia or Switzerland. Maybe we could just do dual citizenship. Maybe that's a solution. I don't know. We've covered a lot today. It's been fun hanging out with you. Once again, we'll do it again next week. Take care.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming free thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.